Welcome to Ask Colleen, Spiritual Solutions for Life Situations. I'm Colleen St. and I will be the host for this podcast. My aim is to provide you with the guidance and support through life's challenges, spiritual development, change, healing, and growth. Drawing from over 2 decades of experience as a spiritual practitioner, I will share my wisdom and offer answers to the questions that may weigh heavy on your heart and your mind. Remember that you are not alone, you are capable, and the light within you is unstoppable. Hello and welcome back. I'm Colleen St. And thank you so much for joining me today on Ask Colleen, Spiritual Solutions for Life Situations. So in today's episode, we're going to be discussing values and integrity, getting to the core of the matter. And we're going to be rolling up our sleeves and getting real about our values that will set our soul ablaze with purpose and fulfillment. But to get there, we've got to confront the places where we may be selling ourselves short. So let's buckle up buttercup and dive in. And again, I'm so glad that you're here and committing to guiding you through the process of the spiritual journey and dehumanizing the things that hold us back from living in our soul's genius. So, what are your values? And are values the same thing as integrity? So I like to think of value as like a GPS coordinate for my soul. They're the principles that guide every decision. And if we think about our intuition would be in alignment with our soul's genius, which is our value system, right? So our soul knows our value. It knows our worth. So every action and ultimately shape the person that we're becoming based off of our value system, these principles. And integrity is the practice of consistently acting in alignment with our values, even when it's hard, even when you may be thinking no one is watching. It's about being whole, undivided, and true to who you are at the core. And here's a tool to get you thinking. Make a list of the top 5 values that currently guide your life now. Ask yourself, are these values ones that I chose or ones that I inherited from others, or a combination of both? This is where your journey of realignment begins. And when we know our values, often we experience a breach in our boundaries when our values are compromised. And we get really mad at other people for compromising our boundaries, but yet we're the holder of those values that support the structure of a boundary. So really, are we getting mad at others or are we getting mad at ourselves? So when we believe in our boundary, when we know our boundaries, we understand that our boundaries are there to support us as a gateway to self-respect, self-love, and it helps us to understand ourselves as to what is important to us. What do we stand for? So there's some signs that your values may be out of alignment. And you may notice that if you find yourself being really frustrated that people don't respect your boundaries, pretty much it's a good indicator that your boundaries are not believed within your own person. Because when you believe your boundaries, it doesn't matter what other people do. It's your responsibility to respond to the boundary that is sacred to you. And as empaths, people pleasers, and sensitive souls, this is really tough because I always felt like I would set boundaries and everyone else had an eraser that was erasing my chalk line boundaries. And I kept navigating outside, pushing my boundaries further, pushing them out further, hoping that people would again maybe respond and stop kind of coming at me. But the reality was I needed to take a permanent marker and create a boundary around myself and then be responsible enough and respectful enough to myself to honor that boundary. Because typically when people push the boundary of you and in your world, they are not concerned with what your boundaries are. They're concerned about what they want. And that's where boundaries becomes uncomfortable, because normally people closest to us are the ones who bulldoze our boundaries. And it's often why we neglect our boundaries, because we may create stories or may say, oh, well, they're going through this or whatever it may be. And boundary, when you hold your boundaries sacred, it doesn't have to be an argument or a conflict that you have to, get on your high horse and start yelling at people that they're not respecting your boundaries. It's for you to check in with yourself and say, okay, is this a boundary? Is there any negotiation room around this? So as we go into this next conversation with yourself, think about if you've ever been stuck in a toxic relationship or a soul-sucking career that just drains your energy. Maybe you've compromised your boundaries or values because the fear of losing something felt too great. Or perhaps you clung to a relationship or situation that you've insisted is so much better than it feels. And you've invested so much of your time and energy, even though it no longer aligns with you. And when we do this, it's not a sign of weakness. Often it's an invitation for your soul to reassess and realign what truly matters. It's a nudging for you to connect in more deeply and ask yourself and remind yourself, and again, reassess yourself, what are my values? And knowing that clarity comes from action, not thought. So I want you to take one small step this week to move away from what's draining you and towards what feeds your soul. And a practice that you can do to assess your values is, again, you have that list of 5 top values. What are your non-negotiables? What is something that you just cannot have any flexibility with because it compromises you on a level that is taking you away from your soul's plan? Because the soul never came here to think less of itself. The soul never came here to cower to another person because they've chosen not to heal their wounds. Our soul did not come here to be yelled at, screamed at, talked down to. Our soul did not come here to believe that it was meant to serve others at the sacrifice of itself. A lot of our human conditioning comes from learning to adapt to situations that are not within our realm of acceptable, because they're either family, we earn income, if it's an employer or a boss or coworker. Often we keep adapting our values to either earn a living because we're afraid of not making money or not being able to support our families. So we keep subjecting ourselves to situations that further are compromising our core belief, our core knowing of what we're worthy of. Because our value is, how do we value our time? How do we value our time that we share at work? How do we share with people, with friendships, with relationships, with family, right? Time is part of value. And often, when you hear people, that was a waste of my time. Well, it's because if you value your time, do you have boundaries when you're at work and stay later than you need to because there's an expectation of you or you don't want to disappoint someone else? Are you distracting yourself by not wanting to address core issues that are happening within you? So you divert your energy and keep working and saying yes to people to find some sort of peace inside. So all these things are aligned with not only the value of what we hold sacred inside of us, what is a non-negotiable, but also how do we value the time we spend with ourselves? And how we spend our time, how we spend our time when we're not doing, and what is mentally happening. Do we devalue ourselves in our thoughts and in our response to making mistakes, in our response to how do we forgive ourselves? So all of these pieces are like little pieces that create a corruption in our peace. And to put the pieces together that are aligned with us, we can do an exercise. Close your eyes if you're not driving, or come back to this part of the audio, and then take a deep breath and imagine yourself at 95 years old, reflecting on a life well lived. What did you stand for? Do you look back and think that you spent your time wisely? That you spoke to yourself kindly? If you had a child or a grandchild in front of you, would you want them to walk the same path that you've walked? Would you want them to embody self-doubt? Would you want them to have given and invested all their time into a job which easily could replace you tomorrow, but brought no satisfaction or fulfillment in your life? Would you look back and think, I am going to die with the dreams inside of me and hold regret? Or would you look at these times and think, wow, I unlocked the keys to my deepest soul longings. I, at 95 years old, said the love that I wanted to say. I, at 95 years old, took the chances, because now looking back, they weren't as big of a leap as I made it to be in my mind. That you took that leap into finding love that aligned with your soul. That you stopped investing in relationships that were just toxic to your being. When you're 95 years old, will you look back and say, you know what? I lived a life that is fulfilling, that created memories and lessons and love, that I didn't scrutinize myself over every last detail or judge myself because my house wasn't clean enough, my laundry wasn't folded enough. Will I look back and have regret that I was too busy to play with my kids? Or will I look back and think, I am so glad I stopped and made this memory and played with my kids? And if you're not 95 years old, God bless. You have an opportunity to shift that energy right now. To reassess your values, reassess your priorities. We're all going to have responsibilities all the time. That is life. But what do we prioritize? How do we prioritize ourselves and value ourselves enough to give to ourselves? To give our soul a shot and actually believe that what we desire is able to come to fruition. And ask yourself, is this my soul's blueprint that I'm resisting? All those intuitive nudges that I hear in my head, that I keep feeling in the belly of my gut to say, you know what, just take a chance. Just give your intuitive nudges some airtime. Give them some breathing room. See how they feel. Try them on. Don't be so quick to shut it down because it's unfamiliar. Because when you're 95, you're going to wish that you had given yourself a shot, given your soul a minute to have some breathing space. And as you look back on your life, I don't want you to look back and regret the misalignments that could have easily been shifted. Life is not about staying in toxic relationships. Life is not about working a job that suffocates your spirit. It's about envisioning, what would you desire? If money wasn't an issue, what would you desire to do? And if you have a passion that you haven't given any time or space to because you can't profit on it, then create a value of time in your life where you feed your soul with that passion. If you don't have a passion, then try everything. See what you like. See who you are. Become an infant, a whimsical child who is curious to look around the world and say, you know what? That's fun. They look like they're having fun. Let me try that. And as you begin to practice these steps, as you allow yourself to think a little bit outside of what you know and be curious as to what could be, you will never judge yourself. And if you find yourself that you're judging yourself and having regret, well, let's learn how to heal. Let's learn how to forgive. Because as you realign to your life, forgiveness will be your superpower. Forgiveness of yourself for staying too long and compromising your truths. Forgiveness to others for not meeting you where you needed them to be. And that's a really powerful statement right there. Forgiveness of others for not meeting you where you needed them to be. Practicing self-compassion because you did the best you could when you were in that time frame. Now it's time to nourish your soul with this practice that will feed your value. Forgiveness feeds your soul. It frees your soul because being angry at someone else, it's a cancer in your being, not theirs. Freeing yourself of carrying the weight of anger, of judgment. There's no medals for martyrs. As a soul guide for over 20 years, I've worked most of my career in the afterlife. And the one thing that I learned was that they do not give medals to martyrs. Sacrificing on this plane of existence does not offer any form of reward on the other side. It's actually the opposite. As you do your life review, you watch and you say, wow, I sacrificed so much in the name of something else, but yet I abandon my own journey. So why do we do this? Because we're told. We're told by generations before us that sacrifice, it's honorable. Sacrifice, suffering, it's a man-made excuse that began at one point where someone who was not emotionally secure, emotionally fluent, decided that they were going to do something. And now it's a common practice that people live their lives by. Sacrifice and suffering offers no reward in the next life. It offers no reward in this life. If you're going to do something for someone, do it, but don't label it with a sacrifice. If you're going to be present for someone, then be present. Don't add the energy of you're giving something away from you to give to someone else. Do it because that's a choice you're making and you stand behind that choice. Because when we can forgive ourselves, when we can forgive others, and if you're new to here, I am a lover of the Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. If you're not new, then you understand the power in this prayer. Ho'oponopono. I am sorry. I forgive me. I forgive you. I love me. I love you. When you are doing forgiveness, imagine that you're not talking to the person and giving them a pass for how they've hurt you. You're talking to the soul. Imagine you have a hanger, hang up their skin suit and put that soul in a seat across from you, because your soul and my soul are all created from the same spark of divinity. And there is not a soul in this existence that came into the world not to be love. So only imagine that when someone hurts you, or someone is not living life in a sense of a light, they're living in a more lower vibrational space. They're not making it personal that they're trying to hurt you. They're living as a wounded person. They're not living in the soul space. They're living in the space of a wounded individual. So we're hanging up that wounded individual because they're not making the choice to heal. But we're talking to that soul who's being shuffled along in life, going against its own natural grain of living in an existence that's not listening to it. And we're going to say to that soul, I am sorry. I forgive you. I forgive me. I love you. I love me. I thank you. I thank me. And we are giving air to that soul. That's where forgiveness comes from. It's talking soul to soul, not giving passes for poor choices and behavior. But you're freeing yourself in the process. Let that become one of your values. That you're not just taking the high road and shushing it off and forgetting how you feel. We're taking the soul-blood road. And that's love and honor. Our value that align with our integrity is about making a daily commitment to live, to breathe, and to act in alignment with our soul's truth. It's a small amount of choices that add up to a life of profound meaning. As you walk this path, get ready to experience a sense of fulfillment and purpose that lives within every breath you take. Your values may evolve just like you do, and that's part of the magic. So keep coming back to what's true to you and for you. And you have the power to create a life that reflects your soul's deepest longings. As you move through each day, you'll start making moves that redesign your life. You may hear that sneaky, pesky voice of the inner critic that's whispering to you things like, you're being selfish. You're making a huge mistake. Who do you think you are? It's just your ego's way of trying to keep you safe in your current situation. But here's the deal. Your ego is not in charge anymore. Your soul is. So when that negative chatter comes up, I want you to acknowledge it, but don't give into it. Tell that voice, thank you for sharing that, but I've got this. Then refocus on your why. The reasons why you're making the changes in your life in the first place. Let your why be the fuel that propels you forward. Even when things get trust, and trust me, it can get tough. But you're tougher, and your soul is stronger. You have the strength and resilience to create a life that truly reflects your values. Your soul-led values. To keep taking those small but mighty steps towards realignment. Even when your ego throws a tantrum, your soul will say thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I would love to know what you think and what you feel and any questions that you may have. So just drop some comments in the section below and let me know where you're at on your journey. Pay it forward and share it with a friend if this episode sparks something within you. Till next time, keep shining your light and living in your soul's genius. You've got this. Thank you for tuning in and joining Colleen St. on this transformation journey. If you have any questions, insights, or topics that you'd like to engage or ask, please visit www.colleenstmichaels.com under the podcast page of Ask Colleen to submit your question. I look forward to connecting with you next time. Have a beautiful day.